quite there yet, but they're practicing, which is why everybody here has got to set a good example. You know, before I begin, I think it's worth us thinking about our fellow Americans who were in the path of Hurricane Florence. These kinds of situations are always difficult. And so it's going to be a long, hard road ahead down in the Carolinas and potentially beyond. Let's make sure that we're all helping out however we can. We want to keep folks in our prayers, but we also want to make sure that we're doing some concrete stuff once we know. Now, all right, let's get down to business. If y'all want to sit down, feel free to sit because I know it's hot. If you want to stand, I don't mind standing. Let me just say, these are friends of mine. I admit I am biased. Richard Cordray is a friend of mine. Betty Sutton's a friend of mine. I have worked with them. I have seen their courage and their determination and their grit. Rich was one of the first people ever to endorse my candidacy for president. He had my back even when some of you couldn't pronounce my name. And if you elect him your next governor, he will have your back every single day. Because that's the kind of man he is. But I've got a broader message. And it's a simple message. Vote! 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 In this country, you take 2 steps forward, oftentimes there's been a step back. You win the right to organize, and then strategies arise to try to bust unions. You win a minimum wage, and then somehow it doesn't go up for 30 years. You win the right to vote, people then try to make it hard for you to vote. Each time we pull ourselves closer to our founding ideals, that all of us are created equal, that all of us are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. Each time we move in the direction of greater freedom and greater prosperity for all people, the status quo pushes back. The powerful and the privileged oftentimes work to keep us divided, work to make us angry and cynical, because that helps them hold on to their power and privilege. And as I said last week, I see y'all over there. You don't have to keep on waving, your arms will get tired. You got these fine young people, they just keep on waving. I see you. We are living through one of those moments. And it didn't just start with one person. We did not just get here overnight. We live at a time where there's a lot of change going on. Demographic shifts and technological changes, and there's rising inequality, and people's lives have been disrupted, and they start worrying about, will their lives be passed on to their children? And then you had a financial crisis hit 10 years ago that upended so many people and made them even more stressed. And we worked hard to lift ourselves out of a potential Great Depression, but a lot of those challenges are still there. And politicians have tried to exploit people's fears to divide. And so what we've seen is a politics that feels broken right now. And even the folks who won don't seem happy. Have you noticed that? You know, I mean, it's really interesting. You know, but you'd think the Republicans, they won the presidency, they won the House, they won the Senate. They're still mad. Which is interesting. And so we are going through this moment where the forces of retrenchment and backlash and anger are constantly being fanned. And we've got, frankly, some media outlets that like to do the fanning. But we worked hard to turn this economy around when I was president, and Rich was there. And the actions that we took during the economic crisis returned the economy to healthy growth, initiated the longest streak of job creation on record, which continues to today. Thanks to folks like Rich and Betty, we covered another 20 million Americans with health insurance, cut our deficits by more than half, partly by making sure the wealthiest Americans, folks like me now, paid their fair share of taxes. And by the time I left office, wages were rising and poverty and uninsured rates were falling. So just remember that when you hear these folks bragging about this economic miracle, just remember when it started. Just remember when the ball got rolling. You know, we spent 8 years pushing that boulder up the hill. We finally get to the top. It starts rolling down the hill. And then These folks come in and say, look at what we're doing. They're standing there. They didn't break a sweat. Didn't do. But we couldn't reverse just in 8 years some of these 40-year-old trends. The decline in unionization, the increase in inequality, greater concentration of power that has big money purchasing influence in the halls of our governments. And we especially had a difficult time pushing against those trends after the Republicans took over Congress. And then they decided to just block everything that we tried to do, even things they supported in the past. So we pulled the economy out of crisis, but there's still too many people in Ohio and across the country who once felt solidly middle class, but are still feeling a very real and personal economic insecurity. And then we took out bin Laden, and we wound down the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we got Iran to halt its nuclear program, but when people watch the news, they still see that the world is full of serious threats. And so people are stressed, and they're anxious. And it seems as if all the chatter and anger on television doesn't match up to their lives. And it frays our civic trust, and it makes people feel that the game is rigged and nobody's looking out for them. And historically, in those kinds of conditions, that's ripe for opportunists who try to exploit America's history of divisions, racial, ethnic, religious. And politicians try to keep us angry and keep us cynical. And they appeal to our tribal instincts and appeal to fear. And they try to pit one group against the other. And they tell us, oh, order and security will be restored if it weren't for those folks who don't look like us or sound like us or pray like we do. That is an old playbook. It is old as time. And the closer you get to Election Day, you can count on more and more politicians trying to pull out that playbook. Now, here's the thing. In a healthy democracy, that playbook doesn't work. In a healthy democracy, where everybody's participating and paying attention and listening and voting, people of goodwill in both parties, they call out the bigots and the fear mongers. And then they work to compromise and they work to get things done. But when there is a vacuum in our democracy, when we don't vote, when we take our basic rights for granted, other voices fill the void. And demagogues get out there and they promise simple fixes to complicated problems. I mean, I know that sometimes, when I was president and even when I was a candidate, folks would say, Barack, you're talking too long. You're like too professorial. You're explaining stuff too much. I know that. But sometimes things are complicated. And I was confident that the American people wanted to hear the truth, wanted to know what was what. But some of these folks, they'll try to pretend like they actually have answers even when they don't even know the problem. And they'll promise to fight for the little guy even as they are catering to the very wealthiest and most powerful. And they'll promise to take on corruption and then just plunder. And they start undermining those institutions that are most essential to our democracy. They start threatening free speech, and they start unwinding campaign finance laws to give billionaires outside influence. And they make it harder for young people to vote, and minorities to vote, and poor folks to vote. And they subsidize corporate polluters and hand out $1.5 trillion in tax cuts without even pretending to pay for them, partly because they figure by the time a Democrat like me has to come back in to clean up the stuff, that they'll suddenly say, oh, these deficits are terrible, and that's why we've got to cut Medicare. That's why we've got to cut Medicaid, because of the deficits. What happened to all this concern about deficits? You weren't concerned when you gave me a tax cut I didn't need and didn't ask for. Look, none of this is conservative. This is not normal, what we're seeing. It is radical. It's a vision that says that it's more important for those who are currently in power to protect that power, even if it hurts the country. A vision that says, unless you can afford a high-priced lobbyist and unlimited campaign contributions, you don't have a voice. You can't set the agenda. And frankly, instead of being a check or a balance on this kind of behavior, what you're seeing are Republicans in Congress who are bending over backwards to try to shield and deflect oversight of this behavior from scrutiny and accountability and consequences. This is serious. You know it is. And frankly, even some of the Republicans know it is. They will say it, they just don't do anything about it. You will read quotes from Republicans saying, wow, this is messed up. Well, why aren't you doing something about it? Well, we can't, because we really like these tax cuts for the wealthy. We really like that deregulation, so polluters can pollute some more. So we'll put up with crazy. Well, I know you won't. Because that's the good news, Ohio. On November 6th, we have a chance to restore some sanity to our politics. We can tip the balance of power back to the American people. Because you are the only check on bad policy. You're the only real check on abuses of power. It's you and your vote. And that is why I'm here. Not just because I love Ohio, although I do. Not just because I love Cleveland, although Cleveland rocks. I am here so you will vote for Rich Cordray. I'm here so you'll vote for Ben Sutton and all the congressional candidates and Secretary of State candidates. Come on. I need you to come through. But more importantly, the country needs you to come through. These kids need you to come through. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Rich just for a second. Rich is somebody who has always been committed to solving problems, always been committed to making the tone of our politics a little bit better. He is somebody who is steady and he's thoughtful. And you know what? He is kind. I know that, I don't know what happened to our culture where sometimes we think that if you're a kind person and a thoughtful person, then you must not be a tough person. I don't know when we began to celebrate bullies instead of looking out for people who care for other people. When did that happen? When did that happen? Rich represents the kind of leadership we need. We don't need to hear from our leaders just yakking and yakking every day instead of doing the work. We need people who will listen to people from all walks of life and both sides of the aisle and bring people together and focus on getting results for Ohio and for the American people. And Rich Cordray is one of those leaders. Rich and I believe a growing economy should benefit everybody, not just a few at the top. So after the financial crisis, he was the first Attorney General in the country to go after the reckless mortgage lenders, the irresponsible actors on Wall Street. And he delivered. And because he was tough and fair and thoughtful and did the work, I asked Rich to become America's first ever consumer watchdog, so he could protect everybody. And he rolled up his sleeves and he got to work. And he made it harder for seniors to get taken advantage of by predatory lenders. He made it harder for veterans to get taken advantage of by mortgage brokers who tried to prey on them when they come home. He returned more than $200 million back into the pockets of veterans by his work, his advocacy. While he was head, of the consumer agency that was looking out for all of us, he fought for and returned $12 billion to 30 million Americans who'd been swindled by dishonest financial practices. He doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. There are families all across Ohio and all across the country who got money in their pockets because of the work Rich did. Folks didn't know it. He didn't go around trying to take credit for it. He didn't tweet about it. He just did it. And if you elect him your governor, he will keep working like that on your behalf, day in, day out, tirelessly. Rich and Betty and I, we believe in America, education isn't just the key to economic growth. It's a pathway to the middle class. Partly because we remember what it's like to pay off student loans. Not everybody can win Jeopardy 5 times. I can beat Sasha at Jeopardy. And that's why he's running for governor, because he knows you shouldn't have to win a game show just to pay for college. And while Republicans in Washington were siding with the private student loan collectors that take advantage of Ohio students, Rich was in Washington securing more than $750 million in relief for student borrowers. He has actually helped students go to college. And as your governor, he's going to keep helping students go to college and strengthen vocational training and work with community colleges and businesses to help prepare people for the jobs that exist without saddling them with a whole bunch of debt. All right, Rich. That's right. That's right. Rich and I, Betty and all the congressional candidates here, we believe that access to affordable health care is not a privilege, it is a right. He is going to work to improve choice and lower costs and protect everybody's care. His Republican opponent voted to cut Medicare and Medicaid, voted against lowering drug prices. Don't boo, vote. He can't hear you boo, but he can hear your vote. On his first day as your Attorney General here in Ohio, he joined Republican efforts to undermine the Affordable Care Act and to try to let insurance companies discriminate against folks with pre-existing conditions. And even now, he can't get a story straight on whether or not he will protect the Medicaid expansion that, under a Republican governor, helped nearly 700,000 Ohioans, and he's kind of not sure. Doesn't know what to do. What's so confusing? If somebody won't fight for your health care as a senator, he won't fight for your health care as Attorney General. And if he won't fight for your health care as Attorney General, how can you trust him to fight for your health care as the governor of the great state of Ohio? Now listen, I know it's hot, so I got to wrap up. No, it is, it's hot. go to Little Teacher. Now, everything that I've talked about is about policy and issues, and it shows the differences between Rich and his opponent, between Democrats and Republicans, and issues matter, policy matters, but here's something I said last week that I want to repeat, because some of the people who may end up watching or seeing these clips may not be Democrats. They may be independents, they may be Republicans. So I want to speak to those folks here. You might not agree with Democrats on every issue, or even most issues. You may not agree with the Democratic position on immigration. You may not agree with health care. You may not agree with the belief that we should make it easier and not harder for young people to afford college education. You may just have a different point of view on policy. That's part of our democracy, that's okay. But what I'm saying is, here tonight, even if you do not agree with the Democratic position on these issues, even if you're an independent, even if you are a old-fashioned Republican, you should still cast your ballot for Rich Cordray. You should still vote for Betty Sutton. Because what's at stake goes beyond partisan politics. Because people of both parties and people who don't have a party affiliation should be concerned with our current course, should be concerned about the basic institutions of our democracy, should want to see a restoration of honesty and decency and lawfulness to our government, and should want to see some sort of checks and balances on what's happening right now. It's not Democratic or Republican to say that you're not supposed to pressure the Attorney General or the FBI to use the criminal justice system to try to punish your political opponent. That's not how American democracy is supposed to work. You shouldn't be a Democrat. It should be a Democratic or Republican issue to say you don't threaten the freedom of the press because they don't publish a story the way you want it. It's not party politics to say you don't target certain groups of people based on how they look like or how they pray. And I know out there are conservatives who recognize there's nothing fiscally responsible about trillion-dollar deficits. There's nothing compassionate about separating immigrant children from their moms. There are Republicans out there who think government should be limited, but think that government should work and should be able to take care of people who are desperate and in need after a hurricane. So yes, there are differences between the parties, but this transcends party. And what you also have to remember, Ohio, is it's not good enough for elected officials who look the other way or issue vague statements of disappointment but then don't do anything, and then just facilitate it and allow it to happen. We've got to have leaders who actually stand up for what's right, regardless of party loyalty. People who will fight for you and what's best in the American spirit. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for, and that's why I'm hopeful. Because out of this political darkness, I am seeing a great awakening of citizenship all across the country. I can't tell you how encouraged I've been seeing so many people get involved. Some for the first time, some for the first time in a very long time. And they're marching, and they're organizing, they're registering people to vote. And some of them are stepping up and running for office themselves. Outstanding young candidates running for Congress, running for the state legislature, running for school boards, running for city councils. The antidote to government by just a powerful few is government by the organized, by the many, by communities that get fired up and are ready to go. And that's what this moment's about. That's the answer to what ails us. One election won't fix everything that needs to be fixed, but it will be a good start. We've got to start now to fix our economy so it works for working people. We've got to start now to fix our democracy so it works for working people. It starts now. It starts with your participation. It starts with your spirit. It starts with your determination. Every day, not just election day. I said this last week, I want to repeat it. The threat to our democracy does not just come from one person in the White House. It doesn't even just come from Republicans in Congress. It doesn't come from billionaires with super PACs or their high-priced lobbyists or Democrats who aren't, taking this or that position on an issue. The biggest threat to our democracy is indifference. The biggest threat to our democracy is where you just turn away from politics and you stay home on election day. And I understand why it happens. That's one of the pernicious things about what happened partly during my presidency, where the Republicans just said, we won't cooperate on everything because gridlock's to our advantage because it'll get people discouraged. If things are just shut down and nothing works and everybody's all arguing all the time, then people will just say, government can't help us. In fact, government can help us. 20 million people got health insurance because people voted. Poverty went down when people voted. But I understand how people can get discouraged. And we set up a system that makes it hard for people to vote, and we set up systems that make it uncomfortable for people to vote. And we don't teach our children, you belong here. Voting's not for somebody else. This is you. This is your government. We don't try to communicate that. I understand all that, but this moment, we can't afford that kind of complacency. We cannot afford to sit this one out. If you don't like what's going on right now, you can't just complain. You can't just hashtag. You can't just get anxious. You can't just mutter to yourself while you're watching TV. You can't put your head in the sand. You can't just boo. You gotta vote. You gotta vote. You gotta vote. And when you vote, not just for Richard Cordray, not just for Betty Sutton, not just for Sherrod Brown, not just for mayors and sheriffs and treasurers and secretaries of state, but also state legislators and state's attorneys and district attorneys. When you vote, you've got the power to make sure our voting rights are protected. And our criminal justice system treats everybody equally under the law. When you vote, you have the power to make sure we strengthen laws that protect women in the workplace from harassment and discrimination, and make sure that women get paid the same as men for doing the same work. When you vote, you've got the power to make it easier for students to afford college and harder for a disturbed person to just shoot up a classroom. When you vote, you have the power to make sure a family keeps its health insurance. You could save somebody's life. That power rests in your hands. When you vote, you're not going to make everything perfect. America's not suddenly going to just be exactly the way you want it. There will still be racism after you vote. There will still be poverty after you vote. There will still be mean people after you vote. There will still be selfishness and greed after you vote. There will still be people who, are more interested in dividing and bringing people together after you vote. Voting will not solve every problem, but it will make things better. It will put in place people who care about you and are willing to do the hard work of pushing that boulder up the hill and making things a little bit better. And when enough people are making things a little bit better, after a while, things are a whole lot better. That's how it works. That's how it works. After the marches and the I Have a Dream speech and Selma and the tragic assassination of a young president, we passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And the day after that law was signed, it's not like suddenly everything was great. But because of that, people like me could aspire to something a little bit greater. Because of the efforts of women who were willing to break down barriers and glass ceilings. My daughters, your daughters, they don't believe that somehow there's anything they can't do that a boy can do. Because folks were willing to organize and go out on strike and sometimes get beat over the head. Because they held together, we got things like the 40-hour work week and minimum wage and the right to collectively bargain, and each of those things made things better. Each generation of Americans has carried us through to the other side. Not by sitting around and waiting for somebody else to do it. Not by saying, well, I'm not going to make things perfect, so I'm not going to bother. But by leading that movement of change ourselves, you and I. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to get involved and knock on some doors and talk to your friends, talk to some of those family members, talk to Aunt Jane, who sometimes, is listening to the wrong radio programs, and talk to Cousin Pookie, who's still sitting on the couch. And if you can convince some new voters, get them out to vote for Rich and Betty and Sharon and this whole incredible team of Ohio candidates, then something powerful happens. When you take that leap of faith and just make a little bit of effort, change happens. Good things happen. Hope happens. And with each new law that maybe just helps a few children read better, hope happens. Each time a poor family finds shelter or a veteran gets the support he or she has earned, hope happens. With each new step in the direction of fairness and justice and equality and opportunity, hope spreads. It's up to you. It starts with you. Let's get out there. Let's get to work. Let's make things better. It's time for a change. Let's get fired up. Let's be ready to go. Kick off your veteran slippers. Put on your marching shoes. Vote for Richard Cordray. Vote for Betty Sutton. Vote for America. Vote for our children. Vote for our future. God bless you.
God bless the United States of America. Let's do this.